Let's get right into it. There's a silent pandemic growing, literally right under our feet, in a place we all try very hard not to think about, our sewers. It's a global health crisis, and believe it or not, the clues to figuring it all out are hidden in our wastewater.
5 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many human deaths were linked to something called antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, back in 2019. And that's in a single year. This is not some far-off future threat. It is happening right now. And the scale is just staggering.
So that brings us to the big question for this explainer, right? How on earth does this invisible enemy, these superbugs, travel across the entire globe? And what in the world does the water we flush away every single day have to do with this massive health crisis?
Well, to answer that, scientists are basically becoming detectives. And their crime scene? It's the sewer system. They're digging through wastewater to track this silent pandemic, looking for the fingerprints that resistance leaves behind. Okay, first, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what we're up against. Antimicrobial resistance, AMR, is basically when germs, bacteria, viruses, you name it, evolve to the point where they can survive the very drugs we designed to kill them. This makes a common infection potentially deadly and makes things like surgery way riskier. Our whole medical toolkit is becoming less effective.
Now, how do you track something you can't even see? Well, scientists use what's called an indicator species, and in this case, it's the famous E. coli. Since it's a super common bacteria in all of our guts, the E. coli in our wastewater gives us a perfect snapshot of the resistance levels brewing inside an entire community. It's kind of like our lead detective on the case.
So let's look at the first piece of evidence. Researchers decided to get a local snapshot. They analyzed wastewater from a community of healthy young people in India. They wanted to see if this quiet invasion of resistance had made it into a group you'd think would be pretty low risk.
And the results? They were immediate and honestly pretty startling. Out of 300 E. coli samples, a full 26%, that's more than a quarter, were resistant to at least one antibiotic. Now remember, this is from a community of healthy young people. The resistance was already there, spreading silently.
And this resistance wasn't just random. The bacteria were most often fighting off tetracycline, which is an older but still really important antibiotic. This tells us which drugs are putting on the most pressure. They're killing off all the weak bacteria, which leaves only the super strong resistant ones to multiply. We're basically accidentally training them to get stronger.
But here's where it gets really concerning. This number, 59%, that's the proportion of E. coli that were carrying something called plasmids. And this, right here, this is the secret to how resistance spreads so incredibly fast.
So what in the world are plasmids? Think of them like tiny genetic trading cards, or maybe little backpacks filled with cheat codes. They're separate from the main bacterial DNA, and they often carry the genes for antibiotic resistance. Bacteria can just swap these plasmids with each other, even with totally different species. It's how a harmless bug can suddenly give a really dangerous one the superpower to resist our best medicines.
Okay, so we've seen the local evidence. Now let's zoom out. The researchers compared what they found to a huge global database of wastewater bacteria. They wanted to see if this one community's story was unique or if it was part of a much bigger, interconnected plot. And what they found is just wow. It's illustrated perfectly here. I know this looks really complex, but it's basically a genetic family tree for E. coli from all over the world. And if you trace the branches, you can see that strains from the study in India are genetically clustered with strains from Europe and North America. They're close relatives. This proves it's not a local issue. These resistant bacteria are true global travelers.
And this problem, it's not the same everywhere, not even close. This table shows some really stark differences. In Canada, about 36% of the strains were resistant to multiple drugs. Okay, but in Europe, that number jumps to 63%. And in East Asia, it's a staggering 82%, with each bacteria carrying an average of 10 different resistance genes. This just highlights these massive global gaps, all driven by things like antibiotic use and how we manage our wastewater. So we have a local problem that has a massive global reach. The final question is, how does this whole engine of resistance actually work? And more importantly, how can we possibly stop it?
A chart like this really shows just how tangled the problem is. It's this massive web connecting dozens of resistance genes to different parts of the world. You can see how certain types of resistance are way more common in some places than others, creating this messy, interconnected global threat. It's a lot to take in.
But what if I told you that all of that complexity,
It all boils down to one simple, powerful, and really vicious cycle. Understanding this cycle is the absolute key to understanding the entire crisis.
It all happens in 3 steps. Step 1, antibiotic use, both in us and in farm animals. This is the accelerator. Every time we use an antibiotic, we kill off the weak bacteria and we select for the strong, resistant ones. Step 2 is wastewater. This is the mixing bowl. All those resistant bacteria get flushed into our sewers where they meet up, swap those plasmid trading cards, and create brand new superbugs. And step 3 is disinfection, which is supposed to be the brake. But when our wastewater treatment is inefficient, we fail to hit the brakes hard enough, and these superbugs get released right back into our rivers, our soil, and our food supply, starting the cycle all over again.
So here's the bottom line. Our sewers aren't just for getting rid of waste anymore. They're actually acting as incubators for the next global health crisis. The evidence is literally flowing right beneath our cities, and it's sending us a clear, undeniable warning. The only question left is, are we ready to listen? And more importantly, are we ready to act?